Hi, hello, welcome to 1-3, day 2. Yesterday in 1-3, day 1, we were multiplying. Today we are going to be dividing. So like always at the very top of your paper, if you could please write today's objective. We are going to find products and quotients of real numbers. So reminder, the word products, we talked about that yesterday. Products mean multiplications. And remember, we talked about real numbers. Real numbers are all numbers. This includes whole numbers. This includes positive, negatives, fractions, and decimals. So that's what we're going to see again today, but instead of multiplying, we are going to divide. So as we start already, I'm kind of telling you, we just talked about it. That word quotient, it's a fancy way to say to divide. You're going to divide these. Today we're going to be working with fractions again. We're going to see this word pop up, the word reciprocal. Reciprocal means we're going to be flipping a fraction. So for example, if you were to have the fraction 2/3, if I were to find the reciprocal of that, it would really be 3/2. Okay, both of these words are probably very familiar. All right, now before we get into this, let's kind of review what we've been doing. We do have a test coming up. So let's bring everything back, everything that we've done. So for example, number 1 is an order of operations review. Let's kind of just see where we're at. So reminder, we're doing parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding, subtracting. So the very first thing that I see is I have parentheses, and inside that parentheses, I have an exponent. So that's the very first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to do that 8 to the second. So 8 times 8 is going to give us 64. The next thing I see in that parentheses, I have a subtraction. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take 64 minus 4. And when I do that, we are going to get 60. We now have an addition and we have a multiplication. So I'm going to multiply that 2 times 60. So I'm going to have 3 plus 2 times 60 is going to give us 120. So then our very last step is we are going to take those and we are going to add those and we are going to get 123. All right. Number 2, this is what we also worked on last week. Reminder, when we have a minus negative, that is just going to turn into a plus. So what I really have is -5 plus 9. Because I have a negative and a positive, I am going to subtract these. Because 9 is larger and positive, I am going to have a positive. So when I really take 9 minus 5, I'm going to get +4. All right, now these next two problems is what we've been working on yesterday, so let's review that. Reminder, when we are multiplying fractions, the bottoms do not need to be the same. We are, though, always going to look to reduce something. So I look at the kind of the kitty corners and see if I can reduce anything. This 5 and the 3, I can't reduce those, but the 6 and the 2, I can. So the 6 is going to be reduced by 2 and it's going to become a 3. And the 2 is also going to be reduced by 2 and become a 1. Reminder now, when you multiply fractions, you go top to top, bottom to bottom. So on top here, I'm going to say that negative is going to go with that 5. So I have -5 times 1, which is going to give us -5. On bottom here, I have 3 times 3, which is going to give us 9. And we always look, can we reduce that fraction more? Is there a number that goes into both of those? There is not. So our answer is going to be -5/9. On this next one again, I'm going to see is there anything I can reduce from both the top and the bottom. There is. I can reduce these 4s. They're both going to become 1s. And this 7 is going to become a 1 as well. So now really I have -1 times 1. And I have 1 times 1. Now this kind of looks a little sloppy here. We're now in high school. I really don't want you to write it like that. So we are going to write that as just -1. Reminder, if I am ever going too fast, to pause the video as you need it. All right, now let's go on to what we were actually talking about. We are going to find the quotient of numbers today. So we will for sure want to have a calculator because we are going to be dividing today. So it says these rules are going to seem very similar to yesterday, multiplying fractions, because multiplying and dividing are very similar since they are the opposites of each other. So it says the quotient of two numbers with the same sign is going to be positive. So just like yesterday, when you have a positive times a positive, your answer will be positive. Same with dividing. If you have a positive times a positive, your answer will be positive. If you have a negative divided by a negative, your answer will be positive. Now, if we have different signs, meaning one is positive, one is negative, when we divide those, our answer will be negative. So again, we see here I have a negative divided by a positive. My answer is going to be negative. So our rules for multiplying and dividing are very similar because they are opposites of each other. All right, so here we go. Let's try this out. This is for sure, I would say, grab a calculator to help you out. So first thing I'm noticing, I have a positive divided by a negative. So I know I'm going to have a negative. So I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to take 48 divided by 3. And we are going to get negative 16. Reminder, this also shows division with this little fraction bar. Just a review of that. Again, I have a negative divided by a positive, so I know I'm going to have a negative. And when I take my calculator and I take 64 divided by 16, I'm going to get negative 4. All right, we're going to get a little bit crazier, a little bit larger numbers. This time I have a negative divided by a negative, so it is going to be positive. And I'm going to grab my calculator and I'm going to say 111 divided by 0.3. And when I do that, I'm going to get 370. So as you can see, we for sure want to have a calculator today. All right, this next one, I have a positive divided by a negative, so I'm going to take 72 divided by 36. I do have a positive divided by a negative, so I know I'm going to have a negative, and we are going to have negative 2. So I'll be honest, that's kind of the easy part of our day. Our calculator is going to do a lot of the work for us. This next part is where it's going to get a little bit crazier. We're going to be dividing fractions. It's very similar to what we did yesterday in multiplying, but we have this first step here, and I actually want you to put a star next to it. This is our most important thing. When you divide fractions, you have to do this thing called keep, change, flip. And reminder, flip, we've already talked about this word. Flip means reciprocal. So what's happening when I say keep, change, flip is that you have to keep your first fraction, change the sign from a division to a multiplication, and you're going to take the reciprocal, aka flip that second equation. So you're going to hear me say a lot, keep, change, flip throughout the semester. Okay, just like yesterday then, our next step is we're going to cross reduce like we did. I already have this filled out. You're going to multiply across, so top to top and bottom to bottom. And then like always, your last step is always to simplify fractions. You always want to look to simplify. All right, so here we go. So we're going to keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. So this first number or fraction, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to change the division to a multiplication, and I'm going to flip this second number. So instead of 1 over 4, it's going to become 4 over 1. Now, we've kind of talked about this a couple times already. Do I need that 1 on the bottom? No, we don't. So you can certainly leave it, but we are in high school now, so you can get rid of that. So now, all what we have is 20 times 4, and we're just going to get 80. Okay. Another thing, notice that sometimes when we do have a whole number here, you could have put this one under 1 as well. That would be okay. All right, so our answer is just going to be 80. All right, so again, we're going to keep, change, flip. So I'm keeping this first fraction. I'm changing the sign, and I'm flipping this fraction. Now notice this fraction has a negative on it. Now that negative was with the 4, so we could absolutely keep that 4 on the bottom, but we usually see negatives up at the top, so I'm just going to float that back up to the top. Okay. So now that we've done that step, this problem's not as easy as that first one. So now I'm going to look, can I reduce something? I see that I have this 5 and the 10 that I can reduce. They're both divisible by 5. So this 10 is going to become a 2, and this 5 is going to become a 1. Now, the 7 and 4, they can't be reduced. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply straight across. So now I have 7 times negative 1, which is going to give us negative 7. And on bottom, I'm going to have 2 times 4, which is 8. I'm going to look, can I reduce anything? Can 7 and 8 both be divisible by a number? They cannot. All right, let's see. I'm going to have you try. So again, if you are watching this video, I want you to take a moment. I want you to pause the video, try the problems. Once you've tried them, I want you to push play. All right, I assume you have listened. I assumed you paused. I hope you tried. And now you're going to see how you did. All right, so again, I'm going to keep change flip. So I'm going to keep this fraction here. I'm going to put that negative up with that 12. I'm going to change my sign. I'm flipping that second equation, and now we are going to solve. I see that I can reduce a whole bunch of stuff. The 13s are going to cancel. They're going to become 1s. Those 12s can be reduced. This one, though, is going to be a negative 1, and this one's just going to become a 1. I'm going to multiply straight across. I am going to have negative 1 on top, positive 1 on bottom, and we're going to finish this off by saying we know that's just negative 1. Check to see how you did. All right, this next one, I'm going to keep, change, flip. So I'm keeping the negative 3/4. I'm changing the sign, and I'm flipping this other one. I am going to change that into negative 3/2. This time I'm looking, can I cross reduce anything? I'm looking on top, I'm looking on bottom. I cannot reduce anything. So now all what we're going to do is we're going to multiply straight across, top to top, bottom to bottom. So I have negative 3 times negative 3, which is going to give us positive 9. And I have positive 4 times positive 2, which is going to give us 8. Now, right now, I'm perfectly fine if you left that as 9/8. I maybe had a couple people who took this one step further and changed it into 1 1/8. These are both great answers. They will both get you an A+. All right, the very last thing we're going to do is a little bit of a combination of things that one of the first things we did in order of operations is that I'm giving you an equation and we are going to plug stuff in and then we're going to solve. So right now I'm asking you what's the value of x divided by y when x equals 3/4 and y equals negative 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to kind of write this how I see this. So I'm going to replace the x with 3/4. So I'm going to have 3/4. We have this fraction bar and negative 5/2. Now, a reminder, the fraction bar is really just another way of saying divide. So I'm actually going to rewrite this in a way that we've been working with all day today. So I'm going to rewrite this 3/4 and I'm going to change that to the divide sign. And I have negative 5/2. This now looks like a problem we've been working with all day today. So now what I'm going to do is how we've been solving this. I'm going to keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep that 3/4. I'm going to change that sign. And I'm going to flip that second equation. So I'm going to change it into negative 2/5. Now, like always, we're going to look, can I reduce anything? I see I can reduce the 2 and the 4. So I'm going to reduce the 4 by 2. So it's going to become 2. And I'm also going to reduce the 2 by 2. So it's going to become negative 1. And now we're just going to multiply straight across. I have that 3 times negative 1, which is going to give us negative 3. And on bottom, I have 2 times 5, which is going to give us 10. So all together, we have negative 3/10. You're going to see a couple of those, but basically it's everything that we have done today. But your initial problem is going to start with that fraction over that fraction. All right. Like always, I want you to summarize. What did you do well at? What are you going to need help on? I want you to scale yourself 0 through 4. 0 meaning you need a lot of work, and 4 meaning you're doing great. All right, thank you very much.